I always knew something was wrong the night my brother collapsed, even before anyone said a word. The phone rang past midnight, the kind of ring that instantly fills your chest with dread. My mother's voice was shaky but controlled, telling me my brother had an accident and was being taken to the hospital. She kept repeating the word, accident, as if saying it enough times would make it true. When I arrived at the emergency room, my entire family was already there, sitting in a tight cluster, eyes red, shoulders stiff. No one looked surprised to see me. It was as if they had been expecting me, preparing for me. They told me he had slipped on the stairs at home. A simple fall. Unlucky, but no one's fault. My aunt explained it, then my father repeated it, then my older cousin added details that didn't quite match the others. One said he fell from the top step, another said it was near the bottom. Someone said he was alone, someone else said they heard the noise and ran in immediately. I noticed these small differences, the way their stories overlapped but never aligned. When I tried to ask questions, the answers came too quickly, too smoothly. It felt rehearsed. When I finally saw my brother, my heart dropped. He lay motionless, machines breathing for him, his face swollen and pale. There were dark bruises along his jaw and neck, and faint marks on his arms that looked like fingerprints. I stood there, staring, trying to make sense of how a fall could do all this. The image wouldn't fit. My mother stepped beside me and gently pulled the blanket up, covering his arms. "Don't look at him like that," she whispered. "He's going to be fine." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe all of them. This was my family, the people who raised me, who taught me right from wrong, who always said we protected each other no matter what. But something inside me wouldn't quiet down. A small, persistent voice kept saying, "This isn't right. This isn't the whole story." In the waiting room, the tension was thick. No one spoke unless necessary. When doctors passed by, my father stood up instantly, blocking any chance for me to talk to them alone. At one point, a nurse asked how long it took before my brother was brought in after the injury. There was a pause. Just a second too long. My father answered, but his voice sounded strained, almost defensive. The nurse nodded slowly and wrote something down. I watched her pen, wishing I could see the words forming on the page. Later, when I tried to step outside to make a phone call, my mother followed me. She took my hands and looked straight into my eyes, her grip tighter than usual. "Please," she said softly, "don't start asking questions. We've been through enough tonight." There was fear in her eyes, not just worry. Fear of something else, something unspoken. When I asked her what she meant, she shook her head and said, "Family stays together. You understand that, right?" Those words echoed in my head. Family stays together. It sounded less like comfort and more like a warning. I began replaying the past few months in my mind. The arguments. The tension between my brother and certain relatives. The night I heard shouting through the phone and he brushed it off, saying everything was fine. I had believed him then. Now I wasn't so sure. As the hours dragged on, exhaustion set in, but my unease only grew stronger. Every time I looked at my brother through the glass of the ICU, I felt a mix of guilt and anger. Guilt for not pushing harder before, for not being there when he might have needed me. Anger because I could sense that the truth was being deliberately hidden from me. I felt like an outsider in my own family, standing in a room full of people who shared my blood but not my honesty. By the time morning came, I realized something had shifted inside me. Whatever had happened to my brother wasn't just an accident, and deep down, I knew my family was protecting someone, or something, at his expense. As I sat there watching the sun rise through the hospital windows, I made a quiet promise to myself. No matter how uncomfortable it became, no matter who I upset, I would find out what really happened that night. I went back to the hospital on the fourth day, early in the morning, when visiting hours were quiet and my family assumed I was at work. My brother was still unconscious, his condition listed as stable but critical, words that felt empty after hearing them repeated so many times. I stood beside his bed for a long time, watching the slow rise and fall of his chest, wondering what he would say if he could speak. Would he confirm my doubts, or beg me to let it go? I whispered an apology to him, then stepped out into the hallway with a decision already made. At the nurse's station, I asked about his medical records, pretending my request was routine. The clerk hesitated, scanning the computer, then told me I could review certain documents as immediate family. My hands felt cold as she printed the pages and slid them across the counter. The stack wasn't thick, but it felt heavy, like it carried more than just medical facts. I thanked her and sat down in a quiet corner, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure people could hear it. The first few pages were exactly what I expected. Admission time, vital signs, imaging results. Then the language changed. I started seeing phrases that didn't match the story I'd been told. Multiple impact sites, patterned bruising, possible defensive injuries. I read each line twice, then a third time, hoping I was misunderstanding. But the words stayed the same. Defensive injuries. I pictured my brother raising his arms, trying to shield himself. That image made my stomach twist. One page noted the estimated time of injury and the time he arrived at the hospital. There was a gap. Nearly 3 hours. My family had said they brought him in immediately. I felt my chest tighten as I realized that gap had been deliberately hidden from me. 3 hours where something else could have happened. 3 hours where my brother lay hurt while people decided what story to tell. As I kept reading, my eyes landed on a short note written by a nurse. It wasn't dramatic or emotional, just careful and precise. Injuries inconsistent with reported mechanism. Family statements vary. Recommend further review. That single sentence felt louder than everything else combined. A medical professional, someone with no reason to lie, had seen what I was seeing now. The truth hadn't just been in my head. It had been documented. I closed the file for a moment, pressing it against my chest as if it might steady me. Memories flooded back, moments I had ignored or explained away. The way my uncle avoided my eyes at the hospital. The sharp look my father gave him when a doctor walked by. The silence whenever I asked who had been with my brother before the fall. It all connected now, forming a picture I didn't want but couldn't deny. When I returned to my brother's room, I noticed details I'd missed before. Faint bruises along his ribs. A healing cut near his eyebrow. These weren't the kind of injuries you get from one wrong step. I felt anger rise in me, hot and sharp, directed not just at whoever hurt him, but at everyone who had chosen silence over his safety. My phone buzzed with messages from my family, asking where I was, telling me not to worry, repeating again that everything was under control. For the first time, I didn't reply. I realized they weren't just protecting someone else. They were protecting themselves, their reputation, their version of what family loyalty meant. And they expected me to play my part. As I left the hospital, the file copies folded in my bag, the world felt strangely unreal. Cars passed, people laughed, life went on, while my own reality had cracked open. I knew that once I acknowledged what I'd learned, there was no going back. The truth would demand something from me, a choice I couldn't avoid. That night, I sat alone, rereading the records under a dim light. Every word felt final. My family's story had been built on silence and fear, but the hospital records didn't care about any of that. They told the truth plainly, without emotion or loyalty. And as much as it terrified me, I knew those pages had changed.